Hello comic fans, here's Earl Grey. Today I want to talk about the art edition, or actually it's an artist edition, of Vampirella, down below here. Beautiful book. But before that I just wanted to show you some other books, and I will give you some examples of some reproductions in these Dynamite collected editions there. But I guess the whole Vampirella mythos and the whole series, I mean, I have 13 books of these. This is stuff for another video. My first encounter with Vampirella was way back then as a teenage boy. I don't know why these magazines had a certain appeal for me, why I picked them up. Let's put it this way, I discovered later on that there are actually some stories behind these beautiful pictures. And later on I really thought that this character really has a lot of charm, and the stories are not just goofy and cheesy, but pretty original in their own right. So somehow this character stayed with me for a long time, and nevertheless, I pondered, should I pick up this artist edition here with the art of one of the, if not the most formative Vampirella artist, the Catalonian Spaniard Jose Gonzalez. The idea for Vampirella was actually born in an act of desperation, since in the end of the 60s the Warren publications didn't do as well as before. So the publisher James Warren had some financial problems in 1969 or so, and then he went with his editor, one Forrest J. Ackerman, into the movies and saw Barbarella and had the great idea of mixing Barbarella with vampires. Seems like yeah, a harebrained idea until up to this day, but it worked, obviously. So she stems from the planet Draculon, and where all the rivers are filled with blood, and yeah. But yeah, for some reason it worked, and one of the biggest reasons why Vampirella was a success, which saved eventually Warren magazines back then, yeah, these were the artists. He had great artists right from the get-go. The first artists, they delivered somehow not the stuff that James Warren had in mind. So we have here a story which is drawn in pretty Wallace Wood-like kind of style. Pretty nice, by Tom Sutton, I guess. Yeah. And others that have a certain appeal in each story here in its own right. But it was something, or somehow always not the kind of stuff that James Warren wanted. It was not before magazine number 12 when he found Jose Gonzalez, and he's by far the most groundbreaking, iconic Vampirella artist. I mean, there's Luis Garcia and some other European artists, because James Warren wanted somehow European look, whatever that means, to the magazine. So here, this is not the first story of Jose Gonzalez, but it's the first story that is reprinted here in this gorgeous art edition here. And what a great idea to place Vampirella in this carnival setting, but this is just as an aside. She has strong sidekicks. He is the grandson of the famous Mr. Van Helsing, the impaler of Dracula, and my favorite character maybe is here Pendragon, who is stage magician, but a really third tier stage magician and an alcoholic, but more kind of a dandy. And the resurrection of Papa Voodoo. The stories are very pulpy, nice mishmash of many things, and nice to read, nice to look at, of course. It's astonishing to look at these, especially these beautiful women that were drawn by Jose Gonzalez, and to know that he was actually an openly gay man, which was not an easy thing, you would think, back then in the Franco regime Spain. Yeah, he worked for fashion magazines and romance comics before and after and in between these Vampirellas. So he had really a knack and liked to draw beautiful women. So we really can be thankful for. And he drew some grisly stuff as well here. Yeah, when you compare it with the reprints here, then you see that a lot of the detail is swallowed, due maybe to inferior printing technique, maybe even to a certain sloppiness in that is somehow a bit typical for Dynamite, but maybe they just used different sources. But it's especially with this story here, it's pretty clear right there from the start. These beautiful ink washes that Jose Gonzalez always used, in contradiction to the hatching and cross-hatching of and experiments that some of his Spanish colleagues used instead. This is something that is very typical for him, as well as a certain way to draw male and especially female characters. So, yeah, let's go a bit just through this gorgeous publication, and I really think that this here is really a treasure, and I really love these pulpy stories, and I read them again and again and find they're pretty very good written. Some of them are written by Archie Goodwin, especially this one here, with this, look at this castle of Count Dracula. Gorgeous. And here you have these ink washes and some scratches to create some foggy effects here. But there's some modern cars to make it clear that we are now in the modern times. So Vampirella is really a modern woman in a way, and but she falls in love with Dracula in these stories here again, because he has the advantage of being from the same planet as she is. There are not many pencils to marvel at here. It's very much the finished pages with these washes and the inks by Jose Gonzalez. But man, I mean, I can show you, as a comparison, the way it was reprinted in these collected editions and the magazines, and it's really from a different level, and it's such a pity that this art here is lost in, or was lost in, these magazines. Jose Gonzalez was always a bit late with his drawing, so it was hard for him to keep the time schedule. So when he sent the pages, the finished pages, from Spain to America with an airplane, James Warren always sent a letterer to the airport, so that the letterer literally could add the words at the airport, so and from them directly drive to the printer. And you see sometimes here and there, there was a lot of correction going on in terms of the words. But man, here, Vampirella and Dracula. What iconic pictures. I'm not a big fan, or no fan at all, actually, of the modern interpretations of Vampirella that Dynamite has put out in the last couple of years. I mean, there are some covers that look intriguing, but it, for me, this stuff here, that's the real Vampirella and the comics. Of course, there's a lot of goofy nonsense here with these silly monsters, and the father of Adam van Helsing here always thinking about should I kill her because he's the vampire hunter, that's in his blood, and so it's a bit hard to take for him to appreciate that his son is in love with Vampirella, with a vampire, and maybe it's even tougher for him that to acknowledge that his hide is always saved by her. So there's a pretty fun dynamic between all these characters. One thing that Jose Gonzalez was not the best at was to draw some grisly bats. His bats are always a bit cute, which is a bit hard sell if these actually are fighting it out. There. Oh, and here, big drama, and a tear is coming out of our eye. And this is the most functional sports dress for skiing, for doing ski ever, of course. Here we have a really brutal story, and so on. Maybe I should flip to some back pages here to show you that Jose Gonzalez really tried different means to craft his art here. These pages were done with black and gray markers, and with a lesser talent this would maybe not work, but Jose Gonzalez really pulled this off. Look at this stuff here. Yeah. I'm starting randomly flipping pages through and through there. Here. In later issues they were a bit scarce, or the art by Jose Gonzalez was a bit scarce. He left Vampirella and then came back, and then he had a bit more time to finish one page or his story, and this shows in a more realistic, more intricate setting. I don't say that I like these pages a bit more than the others. I like them all, but you really see that he had a bit more time here, especially with these pages here, these portraits. What a book, really. That's really nice. And there was, of course, lots of other talent involved here, and in doing these Vampirella stories, as it is with the aforementioned Spaniard colleague of Jose Gonzalez, Luis Garcia, and we have even Esteban Maroto somewhere here, and lots of other talent to explore here, and of course not each and every Gonzalez story of Vampirella is included here. So maybe that's the reason why they called this tome here #1. But since it was not really yesterday when they printed this one here. Let's look at this. I'm pretty positive that, yeah, 2016. So, yeah, maybe we will be graced with a second edition or second volume of this art edition here, and then I wouldn't hesitate as long as I did. As I have hesitated with this one here. Highly recommended if you see this somewhere to pick this up. It's really one of these art editions that really deserve your attention. Thanks for listening and watching. Goodbye.